What's up, guys? Ray Reinhardt's Chaos Astrologer. Today's the 24th of July, 2018. It's 2 p.m. It's Mars Day. And before I become fashionably late, as I usually am, let's try to curb that, I'm going to discuss the lunar eclipse video, or the lunar eclipse coming up on the 27th of July. So July 27th, just a couple days from now, we're going to be having a lunar eclipse in the sign of Aquarius. So we're into Leo season. So full moons are the polarity of that, which would be Aquarius. So usually during a solar eclipse, which is what we actually just had recently, because there is a solar eclipse and then a lunar eclipse that follows within a 2-week duration. The solar eclipse is when the moon is basically lined up and has the same sign as the sun, which is why the solar eclipse was in Cancer, because that was during Cancer season. When we have a lunar eclipse, it's the moon's actually not next to the sun. It's on the opposite side of the earth, and the light that's shines past the earth, and then it actually makes the moon look red, which is the blood moon phenomenon that you've all heard of. So for this particular lunar eclipse, I'm not entirely sure why. I haven't looked into it. It's supposed to be one of the longest of this century, which makes me wonder if that's what some of the spirits have been talking about, because they've been mentioning something like that for a while. But I mean, granted, a lot of things they say are directly interrelated with other things, so who knows. Anyway, so I have it set for the Pacific Standard Time, by the way, but we're looking at the chart for the moment of the eclipse. Lunar eclipses are a little different than solar eclipses. Okay, so as I mentioned on my Instagram, solar eclipses affect a certain localized area. As a matter of fact, the last one that just happened primarily was over Antarctica, Australia, New Zealand, Papua New Guinea. Those would be the focals, or the localized area of where that solar eclipse will affect things. And just so you know, if you're not aware, in medieval times and through medieval astrology or Platonic astrology, all eclipses, even back in other cultures, are attributed to be omens. So, for example, I've said this before, the total solar eclipse that went over the United States triggered wildfires all over the Pacific Northwest, violent hurricanes, Hurricane Harvey. For example, the midhaven, basically the top center of the eclipse, where it was localized, was Texas. Hurricane Harvey, all of that was like the worst of it. Then there were hurricanes, one after another, coming up over into the south. And then we had the horrible freezing winters and everything like that, because the effects of an eclipse last 6 to 18 months. Since this is going to be one of the longest, despite the fact that it's a lunar eclipse doesn't have a direct localized area, because it can be seen everywhere. The number one golden rule with eclipses of any kind: if you can see it, you'll be able to feel the effects. That's just how it goes. So, usually I determine that lunar eclipses are more of a sociological global thing. And I look at that primarily as sociological trends as opposed to environmental. So let's go ahead and look at the chart for this eclipse. On the Pacific Standard Time, which is mine, it'll be at 1:20 p.m. Friday, July 27th, 2018. For the now houses at that moment, so these will be the themes that will be immediate because of this eclipse. There is Jupiter and Scorpio in the first house. That insinuates some sort of knowledge of the occult. I.e., this could be an example of manifestation of that. In the fourth house, we have Mars, the Moon, the Earth symbol, South Node, and the IC. And then we have, in the seventh house, Uranus and Taurus, with Juno and Taurus. And then in the 10th house, of course, we have the Sun conjunct with the North Node, Midhaven, Pallas, and Mercury. Note, the nodes as well as Mercury are officially retrograde during this time frame. So a lot of this lunar eclipse will be people reflecting upon the controlled information that they have been receiving. So Jupiter has to do with higher learning, education, knowledge, collective knowledge. And Scorpio, being a facet of Pluto, has to do with buckling down, controlling, or restraining, or manipulating information. So there'll be a continuation of manipulating information, but also liberating of information as well. Because Uranus being opposite with that would cause a abnormal phenomenon that Jupiter and Scorpio would normally do. So there will be a continuation of people trying to cap down on information, quote unquote, the mainstream, monsters more or less. But there will also be some sort of revolt too, because Mars, think of Mars, the Sun, Uranus, and Mercury and Jupiter all being in the now houses for this eclipse, means that there's going to be something, again, as I mentioned in my Mercury retrograde video, that will be said that will likely ignite people or get people riled up, and there will likely be some sociological disturbances, chaos, clashing, riots of that nature going on. Naturally, us being in Leo season, everybody's going to be dramatic as fuck, as per usual. Forgive my language if you care. And for the future, so not the immediate time, but the repercussions of what would go on at the present moment, we have Vesta in the 2nd house, we have Neptune in the 5th house, we have the polar ascendant in the 8th house, and then we have Venus in Ceres and the trans-Pluto aspect in the 11th house. So Vesta as well as Ceres being in the future houses is actually a great thing. This insinuates that despite the conflict or clashing that goes on at the present moment for this lunar eclipse, that there is some sort of gold lining with this. Primarily that people will see the error in their ways or be able to resolve a lot of their potential conflicts. So that's good. Especially when we look at the past houses, we have Saturn, Pluto, and Black Lilith in the 3rd house, which is one of the past houses, and it has to do primarily with education. Communication, sorry. And on the opposite side of that, we have Hades in the 9th house of education, meaning that people are manipulating information and teaching them the wrong facts, the wrong things. So that is the precursor for what's been going on with that. We also look at the other past house, which is the 6th house, that has Eris, Hygeia, and Chiron in it. So that insinuates that the weaknesses of the people collectively, we could talk about like on a national level like the United States, or even a global level, have been manipulated. The trust that people collectively have in the higher mainstream monsters media has been thoroughly abused, and it's reaching to a point now where there's been violence obviously, but it's reaching to a breaking point now, the cognitive dissonance, where the people who are continually fed the false narratives and the lies are coming face to face with the actual facts, and then they have to then act accordingly on their own right, how they want to pursue that or not. Some of them will act psychotically and just continue to attack people and cause incidences, or some will actually reflect. That's the beauty of Mercury being retrograde during this eclipse. Reflect their self-ideation, because it's in Leo, and potentially see the error in their ways, which is the trans-Pluto Ceres and Venus all in the 11th house. Meaning refining or reanalyzing your relations with other people. How you can heal, really horrible feuds. Civil War kind of level stuff. And that's essentially the breakdown for the lunar eclipse. That's super quick. I really don't see anything else other than that we really need to talk about, again, because lunar eclipses are primarily sociological or, actual mundane trends as opposed to environmental stuff. So, if anybody has any further questions, hit me up, comment below, hate mail, love mail, suggestions, feel free. Asta!